Hello, friends. Welcome back to another beautiful life journey with Honoring the Journey. I'm Leslie Niche, your host. As we go through, we're going to take another path today, guys. And I'm so excited about this path because I found our guest, Anelisse, on TikTok. She was sharing her spiritual awakening. And when I say that, I think it's because she doesn't know what else to call it. And I think I feel the same. I feel like kind of what I've been going through is very similar. But anyway, Annalise is a wife. She's a mom. She's a singer songwriter. And like I said, you can find her on TikTok going through this spiritual awakening and sharing what she's learning along her journey with us. Annalise, welcome to Honoring the Journey.
Hi, Leslie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm
Yeah, of
excited.
course. Yeah, I'm excited to hear your journey. What I like to do when I first start is to get to know our guests a little bit more on a personal level. I just ask this random question. And, you can take all the time you need to think about the answer. Basically, what I would like to know from you, Annalise, is if you were having dinner, like who would you choose to have dinner with in all of the world, living or dead? I mean, besides Jesus, we know you want to ask him some questions, but like who would you want to have dinner with and why?
Oh, wow. I would probably say, okay, there's two
Okay.
on the celebrity side and then on the more of the spiritual side.
Of
If
course.
I had to pick, I'd say Eckhart Tolle is an incredible person. I believe I would
Yeah.
love to take that man to dinner. He's he's
And
just
why
a
is that? Tell me why. What do you think is so great about him?
he has just been really instrumental in my journey as far as
Mhm.
the spiritual side goes. And I love about him that he just has no uh personality that gets in the way, no ego. He just talks from you can totally tell from a deeper place.
Mm.
And I just think he'd be incredible to dine with. If it wasn't him though, it would be Elvis Presley.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. That's
I
my
love
childhood right there. You're
what
a big
about you?
fan? What about
Yeah.
me? She says, "I'm gonna interview you too." I don't know. Um, it's funny because I didn't even think about the answer because I was just gonna ask you, but I would say, I don't know, somebody fun, somebody who would make me laugh, whoever
Yeah.
that would be. I
I
just love to
Elvis
laugh.
is a funny one. I just think he's great. Yes, I'm a big Elvis fan. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Elvis too. That would be kind of fun. I would like to know more about his life and his journey. I'm so inquisitive. I'm so curious about everyone. I just feel like anyone I meet, probably you would be surprised how many amazing journeys are out there. And I've missed out on it so much of my life just out of fear and out of like, not wanting to hear somebody's journey who isn't exactly like mine because what if they deceive me? What if they take me down a dark road,
That's the comment I've been getting since sharing this is don't lead people. You can't share anymore with people without them thinking you're, derailing them. It's hard.
Yeah, it is hard. And, I've done some research into why people are so resistant. And most of it, I mean, a lot of it has to do with neuroplasticity and their brain and the way that it's wired. And they're clinging, as Michael Singer talks about in, I think it's chapter 14 of The Untethered Soul. He talks about how we cling to a truth, to
Yeah.
a reality. We're like, this is true for me. And if somebody starts to say something that doesn't line up with what you believe, it's like you're tugging them away from their
Right.
safety, their
Right.
their truth. And that's very difficult. And it can bring out some real ugly, I'm sure you've seen ugly things.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I
Well,
I completely agree.
so let's talk a little bit about your journey. Let's talk about when you were a girl, little girl growing up. What was that like? Did you grow up in church or did you get there later in life? What did that look like?
So I have always been in the church setting. I was raised in a very beautiful family, Christian household. It was always great for me. I didn't ever dislike the way my religion went.
Mhm.
But yes, grew up in church every Sunday, a lot of Wednesdays, every summer camp, every VBS. Um, I was always a very spiritually sensitive kid. And that was hard. I would just feel things that other people weren't feeling and notice things that other kids weren't noticing. And
Mhm.
always felt a little out of the mold, I guess. So really, like, I guess the spiritual awakening has been all of my life because something was, I just know when I was a child, something was different. But as far as the church goes, yeah, every year, every season of my life.
Wow. Yeah, I can relate. Well, sort of. I mean, I guess my family started going when I was, I don't know, 10, maybe 11, something like that. And so from that moment on, everything changed for me. Going from not knowing anything about it to all of a sudden, whoa, there's this guy called Satan and he wants to take me to hell. And there's a God who wants to save me, but I got to make sure, it was just a lot as a
It's
kid. But it sounds like your environment was really it was safe for you and it was
good.
good.
Yeah, I don't have the kind of story where I look back and think, "Oh gosh, I was, so horribly indoctrinated and I hated every minute." I loved my faith. I really and do. It's changing, it's evolving, but I guess I'm saying I never looked at my life and thought, "Oh, I wish this wasn't how I was being raised," or "This is off." I
Yeah.
was satisfied in it up until this kind of spiritual awakening began, and then I started to really have to answer some hard questions, for myself.
Well, so let's talk about that, your spiritual awakening. What exactly prompted this and how long ago was it?
Yeah, okay, so, um, I would say it really began after I had my 2nd son. I have 2 boys. My youngest is 3, so about 3 years ago, I entered into a really horrible chronic pain journey. After having my 2nd son, I have some, like, autoimmune issues and, fibromyalgia, pain flares, that kinda thing. So after I had my son, it was a difficult C-section and a difficult birth, and I just did not heal well.
Mm.
Um, so I was living in horrible pain every day with this newborn and this 3-year-old, and it got to a point where I was pretty bedridden. I couldn't operate as a mother should be able to. My husband had to do a lot. Um, and it took me down, spiritually speaking. It just took me to a place where I didn't feel like living was worth it anymore,
Oh,
um,
wow.
because every day was so painful and I couldn't enjoy the goodness of life anymore.
Mm.
So I'd always had a strong faith. I'd always leaned on God, and I just prayed in a way I hadn't before, just like, God, anything, just do anything that will get me out of this. Because I'm not going to make it if I keep in this pain state. The all the doctors, I had so many doctors and nobody could fix it. And I had so many pills they tried and so many spinal like little procedures they tried to get me out of this chronic pain state and nothing worked. So, um so that brought me to that very low point.
Mhm.
And I cried out to God in a way I hadn't. And um I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. So, my mom has always been my biggest cheerleader in anything in life.
Mm.
And she saw me like this, obviously, and she got me this app. It was called Curable. And Curable was all about healing from within through things like meditation, journaling, spiritual practices, just more of a holistic way of healing for people with chronic pain or chronic anything really, addictions. And I was kind of mad at first when she like suggested this. She was like, just do this app. I really think I'm like, Mom, I've been like this for, a year. I'm not, it's some app's not going to make me better. She's like, just try it. I bought you a year with it. I'm like, okay. She bought me a whole year on this app. So I started doing the practices in there. It began with meditation. And that was hard at first to sit silently and not be asking God for anything, not be telling
Mm.
God anything, but just waiting and listening. But I slowly built that up and started doing the journaling activities too. Then I started reading the books the app recommended, all these holistic things, inner healing, which I never thought to turn to. And then on this journey, there was there was one day in particular, I sat outside with my dog, and I guess you could say I was meditating. I was just sitting. I wasn't doing anything. And I had what I can kind of only phrase as a vision. It was like experiencing a different reality.
Mm.
Where in kind of a moment, like an instant, something woke me up spiritually. I understood the oneness of all that is, and the divinity in all that is. And I met with the presence of God in a way I never had before. And it was very profound and incredible. And I got a lot of what I call downloads during this. You might hear spiritual people say that kind of thing. All that means, that, as at least for me, is information just being dropped into your head about how reality is and how God is and how we are.
Hmm.
Things you can't just get from a book. It just comes from source. So this very mystical, interesting experience triggered by horrible pain, horrible suffering, to the point where um, I was at a point where I wouldn't have harmed myself, but I was praying that God would mercifully take me out of the
Hmm.
game.
Wow.
Um, and I would beg my husband some days, just do anything, just get me out of this. I can't do this. So, and I've read that these kind of spiritual awakenings are often triggered by deep, deep suffering.
Hmm.
I know that Eckhart Tolle, like I mentioned, that was his. He was in a deep, deep depression. So, roundabout way of saying, that's kind of what got me to that point. And I'm having this mystical experience and understanding these things I never could have before. And when I kind of come out of it and come back to this reality, I guess you could say, I knew, oh my gosh, the God I've been worshiping, yeah, that wasn't him. Like,
Hmm.
that's not how he really is, as was just revealed to me. And that really started my, what I've been told is called a deconstruction. I never even was familiar with that term, funny enough,
Yeah. Hmm.
uh, because I wasn't shaken awake to a place where I wanted to walk away from my faith at all.
Hmm.
I was awakened to a place where, oh my gosh, my faith, it tried to grasp what this whole God thing is, this whole, but
Hmm.
it wasn't it. And and that's what started it, really, was the pain.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm trying
And
to wrap my brain around, like, that. And it's funny that you said you didn't know about I don't think most people do. Like, I didn't go, "Oh, I'm gonna go deconstruct." I had no idea what I was doing. I think I was doing it for 4 years before I realized that was a term.
yeah,
So, yeah, it's more just it's almost like you're dismantling, and it's not dismantling your faith. It's
yeah,
dismantling your theology and how
yes,
you see God. And
yeah,
doing that is, I think, so important. And I
yeah,
think such a we're so afraid to do it because it gets a bad term. But I think what's scary is that some people wind up like you in a stronger place and
yeah,
other people run away completely. So deconstruction, the outcome can be so vastly different.
right,
And I think it scares people because they're like, what about those people that leave and never, come back? And it's like, well,
right.
I don't know. It's a process.
It,
And I love that you are sharing this with people. It is kind of, I know when you first start sharing these really intimate parts of your life, on a social media platform, it can be a little overwhelming. I'm sure not everybody has accepted what you've said.
definitely not, definitely not.
Yeah. Well, like, tell me, something happened with your son too.
Yes.
Um, something happened with him. Is that what made you decide to start going public with this?
That is my son's questions to me, which I can get into. That's
Yeah.
what made me start looking at my religion as a system to, I guess the word is deconstruct. Because when I had this, what I'm gonna label a vision, um, I knew I had met God, and I had felt for the first time ever real peace and
Mm.
oneness, and realized God and I were not separate. God and anything was not separate in creation, that God was expressing himself in all these divine ways within our form. And it was a lot for my mind, because I thought, no, I'm Annalise, I'm this person, I'm these roles, I'm all these things, and God is this entity in the sky. So it really
Mhm.
shook me up. Um, but and I will say, I should have said this earlier, I've been chronic pain free ever since. Um,
That's what
it
I was getting ready to ask you. Like, did it in that moment that you had this vision, is that when the pain was subsided?
I can't remember. I don't think it was an instant thing. Um,
Right.
but it was that from that point on that I started to really heal very
Mm.
quickly. Um,
Which
but
which leads me to ask a question. Are do you I mean, like, I talk about this a lot. I have a little group called Religious Rehab where it's like a group of people who go through, um, deconstruction together, and we talk about certain things. And the thing we were talking about last night is just autonomy and, where we carry pain and anxiety in our bodies. And I'm wondering if your spirit was, like, just crying out. And do you
absolutely.
think yeah? Okay.
I absolutely think it was a lifetime of spiritual incompatibility that needed
Mm,
to be rectified. I think it manifested after my children's births and just the trauma my body went through. My body was just like, "All right,
mhm.
we're done." We're
Yeah.
and my it was like my nervous system was firing constantly with pain.
Mm,
And even though there was nothing anatomically wrong in my body, um, but the blood work showed that I was in this like fighting state at all times. Um, and I had this friend in my life. My husband and I have a friend who is very spiritually gifted and can just see things in people. And he told me he said the moment I met you, I could see the pain and I
mm,
could see your nervous system had to be completely reset. Your brain had to be just like wiped clean for this to be healed. This wasn't a medical issue. This was more of a spiritual thing.
wow.
And he's really big on the kind of spiritual side of healing as well. So I definitely think it was a spiritual thing. If I could rewind
Yeah.
a minute,
Okay.
when I had this experience after all this pain, I had the spiritual awakening side of things, but coming out of it and integrating all that I had learned, I had not yet applied it to my religion.
Mm,
So I had seen things and understood things about God and about myself that I never had before, but it took a while for it to touch my religion.
yeah.
All the other systems crumbled a lot faster for me as far as this little matrix of a world we live in and these systems that we
Mhm.
live in. Those were easy to come down after this experience, but my religion was not. It was
Yeah.
much stronger than anything else. So I continued going to church. I was a worship on praise team, like a worship leading regularly, working in children's ministry. Some it was my life,
Mm,
but I very quickly got to this point in my mind where I wasn't comfortable there anymore because I knew that the God we were worshiping did not match the God of Christ, if that makes sense.
totally.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and I got very uncomfortable with that, but I wanted my children in a godly environment. I wanted my children to be raised in some kind of Jesus-based faith, so we kept
Mhm.
going. Um, my son last year, he was 5, he's he told me, he said, "I wanna, I wanna ask Jesus into my heart, and I wanna be baptized," and all these things that a Christian parent just prays for and just hopes for the day. And he's
Mhm.
very spiritually aware and gifted. He's not your typical 5-year-old, um, at all.
Sounds like his mom.
Oh gosh, well, thank you. He understands and sees things that a child doesn't usually. Um, and so he said, "I wanna be baptized. I wanna ask Jesus into my heart," but he said, "But mommy, what's this whole thing with Jesus dying? Like, what did that even do?" And I probably gave him the church answer now thinking back, the, sacrifice of animal answer and all that, and he's looking at me and he's like, "Mm-mm, no, that's
Wow.
not that's not it. Like, what did it really do, mommy? Because that's nothing. What you're saying, that's not it." And it made me step back and go, "Oh my gosh, he might be right." Like, he's a child, he's not been programmed yet, he doesn't have
Yeah.
this dogma yet, and he's saying the Jesus, the God that he knows, wouldn't be needing a blood sacrifice. So what's the story here? And I just began praying and searching and reading everything and watching all the videos and studying, ancient creation stories and studying um, how things were understood in other times by the religious people who made the religion we follow,
Mhm.
and praying for wisdom, and God gave it. God gave it, just like cracked my world wide open.
Wow.
And um, the things I began to understand, though, were not things that I felt I could share with anyone because they went so against the religion I was raised in. They didn't go against the message of Jesus or Yeshua, but they went against the Judaism part of the religion I was raised in. So I kept it inside for a long time. We continued going to church, continued doing all those things. Um, but last August, we left our church because of these things, but also because some really difficult things had happened in my family's spiritual life. My
Mm.
husband had had a really traumatic seizure last August that really shook us up pretty badly. He's a type 1 diabetic.
Oh,
And
wow.
he almost didn't live through it, and on that same day, before the seizure, I experienced some spiritual warfare in my life where I just went into a pretty deep depression, and I didn't understand what had started it, and then that night, he had the seizure.
Mm.
When these feelings came over me, I turned to him and I said, "Something's going on in my spirit, some kinda dark something. I just feel heaviness. Can you pray for me?" And he did, and then that night, he had this horrible seizure, and our life just spun. It was a very difficult season. We left our church because of the spiritual issues I had been
Mhm.
recognizing and just because life got hard. But we regretted it because we thought, well, we can't be right. I mean, leaving church, that can't be right. We must have done something wrong, even though we hear the voice of God inside telling us what we need to do. That can't be right.
Mm.
All the things with my son's questions, all the things with my spiritual walk had led us to a place where we knew we had to step away from church. Simultaneously, my husband has this seizure. Simultaneously,
Mm.
I go into this horribly dark depression that I could not even describe to you the depths that it took me, um, and which led me crying out to God again in ways I hadn't, and again to miraculous healings through this spiritual awakening. And I think it's all connected. I think because I had done something that would go against what a lot of people call Satan, the
Mm.
enemy, darkness,
Mhm.
that force was fighting back and trying to make sure I did not get to the other side of where I needed to be. So about 9 months later, this depression lasted for about 9 months. I came out of it and I knew we have to leave the church. Like it's all connected. I'm not living in my authenticity. I'm not living in what I know God has told me to do.
Yeah.
I'm spiritually unhealthy because of it. It's I had to leave, and we had some really, really difficult conversations with our pastors, who were so sweet and understanding, but also they didn't understand, at the same
Well, they
time.
were worried for you. They were probably
Right.
very scared for you. A lot
They
of
were.
fear.
They
So
were.
much fear.
They didn't understand what I was talking about, and I
Mm.
understand that they didn't understand.
Mm.
Um, but because of the questions my son had, because of how they were teaching him in the same way I had been taught, and I knew this no longer aligned with what the God that I had met. We had to
What
leave.
was different about God all of a sudden? What was so different? Like, when people say things like that, it's like, well, I guess my mind is like, what did that look like? Because I think it's I think I know what you're gonna say, but I want you to be able to express that to my listeners.
Yeah. The God that I met during that healing experience was pure love,
Mm.
pure awareness and acceptance, not any ounce of anger or ha- there was nothing about God. And that term is so limiting. The word God.
Yeah.
I can't even use it. I'm using it because that's how we use our words.
Yeah.
But it doesn't touch the energy that I met with. It was just
Mm.
not that word just can't explain it. But pure love, no anger, no lack, no need for anything.
No retribution?
In the moment that I was experiencing, I didn't feel that there was an anger behind
Mhm.
this force.
I
I had
only ask that because that's the God I met too. in my awakening, like the one that was not
Yeah.
retributive and angry and needed to kill someone in order to
No,
the blood needed to spill. I mean, that's just not
no, and
it
the
doesn't make sense to me now.
no, it same, and
Yeah.
now when I hear songs about being covered in the blood, my skin
Mhm.
crawls. I
Yeah,
mean,
same.
it's it does not hit the same after meeting with God.
Mhm.
Now I can't
Exactly.
say that this God, our creator, doesn't have any part of him that has a justice like, I'm not saying that,
Right, yeah, same.
but the force I met with, no, there was no "I need blood to forgive," aspect of that.
Mhm,
Just love, acceptance, awareness, and connected to everything.
mhm.
And I came out of that realizing it's people who mess all this stuff up. It's not, you know, it's just not quite the way it was explained to me,
Yeah,
growing up.
and that's scary. When you first come to terms with that, you're like, "Okay, am I being deceived? Is the enemy,
Yeah,
deceiving me?" All these things, and I think it makes sense that you were kinda quiet about it for a long time. I think most people are because they're, like, wrestling with, "Is this true?" But the more that you lean into this God that you meet, there's no denying it, and then once you see it, you can't unsee it. So,
yeah,
I understand completely why you left your church. I understand because it's like this doesn't fit. My heart and my mind are not in agreement in
yeah,
this, and I feel like when that happens, there's this unsettledness that almost feels like anxiety, like something's
absolutely.
wrong. And so I totally get what you're saying. And I know you feel a little like you're scattered, like as you're telling this, but I'm
Mhm.
like, yep, there it is. Yep, that's exactly like you're not alone. I think that's what I want you to know. Like what you're seeing, what you're feeling. There's so many of us that are waking up to this. And I feel like that so many people are afraid to talk about it because it's almost like when you talk about this stuff, you're like the person who saw a UFO and nobody believes you.
Exactly, you can't not sound crazy,
Yeah,
and
and I get it. I get that.
that's hard. Explaining these things to, like, my parents. I told my mom, I said, "I know you think I'm a nut." Like, I know, and she didn't say, "No, I don't." Like, she like, she totally does, and I said, "I know you do, but mom," I was like, "It's just because you didn't experience what I'm talking about, but
Mhm.
I'm not crazy. This is
Yeah,
just it's the beauty of how it actually is. We're the ones living in crazy land the way we
yeah,
live."
yeah.
And, but yeah, the God that I met that day was the God that my son knew.
Mm,
Where when he said, "How I don't understand why Jesus would need to do anything with the blood for God," you know, I I started really studying into atonement theories after this. The atonement theory the majority of churches teach versus the others, there's other options. It's not
mhm.
just, the belief that, well, God was angry with you and he needed blood to cover the sins because he can't accept anything that's not holy, and blood makes things holy. I mean, it just once you wake up,
It
it just
doesn't yeah.
it
You're like,
spirals.
"Are you kidding me? So you created me to be separated from you, and I
Right.
have to let Jesus cover all of me so that when you look at me, you see Jesus. Why didn't you just create another Jesus if that's what you're looking?" Like, I
Right.
feel like that it takes away our autonomy incredibly. It's like and our self-worth, it takes away the trust in who we are. It takes away um just that oh gosh, what's the word? That knowing that God is in me
Yeah.
and loves me. And I feel like that now to me is the message of Jesus, not you're a sinner and you're going to go to hell if you don't believe in me. I believe he came to show us that you are connected to God. You are
Ah,
connected. And if you would believe this, you could do even greater things than me.
yeah, we
Does
don't talk
that
about that one, do we?
no, we sure don't. We don't talk about. But there's so many things we don't talk about. And
Yeah.
I feel like it's because people don't wanna come up against the system, and I get that. I mean, because when Jesus did, look what they did to him,
Exactly.
his own family thought he was crazy, you know? Your own family thinks you're crazy. Like,
Yeah.
I get it. My own family thinks I'm crazy too, and it's like, but what do you do with this when you're just so I mean, like, I'm experiencing peace and freedom like I've never experienced before. There is no
Yeah.
fear anymore.
Yeah.
Perfect love casts it out, and I didn't even know. I don't know what I was experiencing
Yeah.
when I was in religion like that because, you know, I was afraid all the time, and it
Yeah.
feels very strange to not have those fears like, I'm just not like, God loves me right where I'm at. Like, what? I don't
Yeah,
have
it's
to
hard to
do anything?
operate without that comfortable fear. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so weird. And so, like, everything you're saying, I know it's hard to, like, put into words, but I get it. I'm
Yeah.
100% with you, and it's so beautiful. It's almost like as I was watching your TikToks, I was just watching this flower open up,
Oh,
like, because I was starting to follow you because I was like, "This girl's she's going through it. Oh my goodness, I get this. I get it 100%." But you're not afraid to share, and, I think the more people that do share what they're feeling and sensing in the spirit realm, like this, I believe is you know, the revolution. I don't know what it's the awakening, it's the revival that we've all been asking for, but we're
yeah.
too busy thinking that a revival is when a bunch of people stay in a church for 10 days and sing, and don't eat or drink. Like, whatever happened from that? Nothing. You know what I mean? Like, the things that happen, I think, that cause revival are exactly what you and I are experiencing, and that is just reclaiming, who God is, at least to us, and just hoping that resonates with someone.
Yeah. And like you said, that it will resonate with someone. There
Mhm,
are things that you hear and you just know they're true because of the spirit of God within you
mhm,
knows what's true. And the more I discover on my journey and I hear these things and I learn these things and then I share, people have that same reaction. Oh my gosh, there it is. You just know it sometimes.
mhm.
Uh, but I
And
think
sometimes
it,
you don't.
yeah, sometimes you don't.
I mean, and a lot of people don't, and I get that, and I used to be that. I would have thought I was crazy 10 years ago. You know what I
Oh,
mean? Like,
me too.
totally, it's fair. You can feel that way. I get it.
Exactly. Exactly. And this whole TikTok thing, I never thought I would be on that app doing this.
Mhm,
Um, I shared my music on that app a bit, not much. But when my story got to this point, like where I was maybe a month or two ago, the spirit within me told me, "Yeah, you're going to share this." And I knew, oh, if I share that where I'm located in the Bible Belt, that's just
mhm.
asking, that's just putting a target on my back. And the spirit within me was like, You're doing it anyway." And so I I would have, like you said, I would have thought I was crazy years ago had I not
Mhm,
experienced what I had. And the thing with religion is it's great up until a point, but once it starts denying personal experience of God,
mhm.
you really got to ask some hard questions. You're allowed to follow a book and believe other people's experiences and live through other people's journeys, but don't go having anything of your own. Don't go meeting with the presence of God on your own if it doesn't match what we believed back in, Deuteronomy. So
Yeah.
it's been a journey, because
Where's your husband in this?
he is he's right along with me. He's been
Yeah,
a great spiritual partner for me in this.
that's
He's
great.
he is a big history buff and just knows a ridiculous amount of things about ancient history and
Yeah.
religion and where religion came from, how Christianity was made, um, what that the darkness that actually occurred to make that mainstream religion. I had no idea about this stuff. And
Mhm,
he kept it from me, I think, to protect me because he knew my religion was important to me. And once I started discovering it, he was like, "Okay, like, do you want to talk about, like, I can tell you some things and we can talk over some topics." And
wow.
it took me about a year to work through the things that I was learning about the history of religion, Christianity in particular, and about ancient creation stories. All these things, I couldn't accept them right away. It was too painful. It was to well, like the way I share this stuff on TikTok. For some people, it is so painful for them that they
Yeah,
lash out in anger and in hate. And I get it. I
mhm,
know why, because I was there. It takes time to peel back these layers of your programming. It's not easy to discover that everything you've ever learned about what you thought was reality is not quite so. and it's
Wow.
really disorienting, and it's not for the faint of heart.
Mm-mm. No,
Not.
this is definitely not for the faint of heart.
And
Yeah,
sometimes I think it's more compassionate sometimes to leave people in
let them
their
be.
let them
You
be.
have to. You have to.
Yeah, because you'll just lose that person otherwise. Some people
Mhm,
are open to it. Some people, like I'm sure a lot of your listeners, they want to
mhm.
hear these things.
They do.
But the people in my life, they don't. And,
Mhm.
it's put a rift in our relationships, and it's hard, because you love those people, but they can't understand where you're at, and you know how to get them out of the hole they're in, but they
Mm.
don't take it because it's so foreign, and
Well, their
it's just
whole is comfortable and it makes sense to them and they have their certainty and they've checked the boxes and it feels like, I mean, they're clinging to a truth that if they don't cling to it, there's so much fear baked into it that the
yeah,
risk of what if I'm wrong if I let go is so great. It is eternal conscious torment. You know what I
mm,
mean? So, of course, they're afraid. I get it. And if you're too afraid to let go, please don't, because it
yeah,
doesn't matter whether you do that or don't do that. God loves you just the same. Like,
exactly,
and that's the beauty of it. I have gotten to the point with people in my life where I'm like, you know what? I know that you trust God and you
yeah,
know that scripture says that he's not going to give up on us until the day of completion. And so, do you trust God with me? Don't worry for me because I don't want to add to the anxiety and fear that they're already experiencing in their religion. I don't want them to also be worried for me. So
right,
just encouraging them to just trust the Lord with us, I think is it's our only line of, I don't know, subduing that anger and that fear and that frustration of what we're going through.
yeah,
Is that
yeah,
how you handle things, or what do you usually say to people when they're like, "What is going on with you?"
yeah. You know, someone asked me that on TikTok. They said, "What am I supposed to do with all the my loved ones saying just that? How do I not lose my cool on these people?" I said,
Mm,
"Well," I said, "For me, I have that thought of Jesus on the cross saying, 'Father, forgive them. They know not what they do.'"
mm,
They they really think they're doing the right thing. They
they
really
do.
do.
Mhm,
And so I try to just have compassion, and I take the hate and I take the punches, just knowing they don't know. And
mm,
if I could just plant a seed, if something I says even just plants a seed to where later on down the road they come to some new piece of information that, oh, hey, that's like what she was talking about. Like, maybe that's helpful.
yeah,
And just have to. I've learned I have to accept people where they're at for who they are and love them right where they're at, just like God does for us.
mhm,
Uh, It's hard. It is so hard when it's your loved ones, when it's your parents, your best friends, and they are sure you're in the wrong, and they are
mhm,
sure that you have gone astray, not understanding that the religious systems that we have been raised under are the things that are leading people further from the true nature of God in a
mhm,
lot of ways. Um, because Jesus didn't come to start any religion, and Jesus didn't give us a list of dogmas to follow. It was all about how to be, how to do, how to serve, how to love. And later, Paul comes and makes a religion of it.
mhm,
And I love a lot of things Paul says, but a lot of things do not align with the gospel of Jesus. So when I tell people, listen, I follow the gospel of Christ, not so the gospel of Paul. If something he says agrees with Jesus, Yeshua,
mhm, mhm.
I know people get hung up on the name thing sometimes,
Yeah,
um, then that's great. But if
yeah,
it doesn't, then it's not for me.
mhm,
I've been taught, hey, this book is the word of God. You can't just pick and choose.
yeah,
But once I had this spiritual awakening experience, I realized God didn't write a book. The
mhm.
God I met didn't write a book. I believe these are divinely inspired scriptures, absolutely.
Of how
But
people saw God.
how people interpreted God,
Yes.
who they
Mhm,
thought was God.
mhm,
And And I think God gives us a spirit of discernment for a reason so that man can't manipulate us with
Mhm.
any book, be it the Bible or something else. I
But it's very easy to do that when you tell people that the Bible is like, if you can't back it up with a scripture, it's not true. If
Right.
it doesn't line up with scripture as a whole, it's from the enemy.
Mm,
It's like and experience is not it's not about what you feel, it's not about what you experience. You can't trust your heart. All these things that they tell us
mm,
keep us afraid to look outside of anywhere else for
yeah.
God.
Mhm.
It's like there's so many things that don't line up. So it's like, how can you say this is the same God? But then when you question, they're like, well, God's ways aren't our ways. Like that is the answer. It's like, we're not going to understand. It's like, well, what if this was just an opinion? Or what if they were trying to scare the nations around them by making them believe that their God was this powerful and scary that they couldn't mess with them?
Yeah.
These are the things that go through my mind.
Yes. I've uh I've done a lot of research on Old Testament God versus God of Jesus. And that is a topic I have to be really careful with, like who I share it with, how I share it, because it can
Mhm.
shake up some brains. Um,
Mhm.
but once you do go back that far and really start digging and questioning, a lot of things come to light as to why was it like that? Why was that God doing that? Why this? Um,
Mhm.
and then Jesus comes and he says the kingdom of heaven is within you.
Mhm.
It's not a deity. It's
Yeah.
it's so much bigger than that. And we glaze over that one, you
Mhm.
know? And it's just it breaks my heart to see religion almost used as a weapon to keep humanity enslaved. I think, who some call the devil, the enemy, has done a really good job of using religion to to keep people further from God.
Yeah.
Um, it gets you just close enough that you think you've got it, but just far enough away that you really don't have any power. And these are people who they want to know God. They want to be close with God. And so they're
Mhm.
told, okay, well, then you got to go to church and you got to follow this and do this and da 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 da. But don't listen to that still small voice inside you. Lean not on your own understanding. But then Jesus is saying the kingdom of heaven is within you. I mean,
Mm.
so how can you say those two? Those are very different things.
I feel like they've made the kingdom of heaven a destination after you die and
Oh,
not a reality on this earth. And I
yeah.
think that is one of the biggest mistranslations in the Bible is that. And when the end of this is your goal, like whatever happens next is your goal, you miss. I always feel like, and I may have said this before, so if you're listening and you've heard it before, I apologize. But I feel like we get so focused on going to heaven that we completely miss the beauty of this gift of life. And it's like we're saying to God, thanks for this gift, but I'm just looking forward to the next one. And I'm
Yeah.
just going to focus on that. And it's like, but I have given you this.
Mm,
Look around. Why are you just looking up? Look
yeah.
around you. There are people everywhere that deserve love and deserve to be heard and understood and lifted up. And you're so busy looking at heaven that you're missing the like I don't want to get to heaven and realize that I missed the entire journey because I was too busy looking there.
And it's like that the scripture where Jesus says, "There will be many who come to me and say, Lord, Lord, but I knew you, but I followed you." And he says, "Who are you?" I think, gosh, I got to be careful.
No,
So
I know. You're good. You're good.
I it really does break my heart to see who I would call my people being the ones being so led astray. But I'm
Yeah.
told I'm leading astray by
Mhm.
sharing my journey.
Right.
And it's such an upside down world.
It is. It is. And I understand why people are passionate about it. That there's a lot of money in
Oh,
church. There's a lot there's a lot of that. There's a lot of security, and just knowing that there's certainty, all the things that make us feel grounded in a world that almost wants to knock us on our butt all the time. So it's nice to have something that makes you feel those things. So I get that. I mean, I understand the security and the comfort and the certainty and all of that.
Yeah.
But you can still have it. It just looks different. It's like instead of clinging to something that's immobile, you're clinging to something that is mobile. Like,
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Well, and I told my husband, I said, it just baffles me how arrogant we are as humanity to think we can figure God out
Yeah.
through religions, you know, like, and then we go as far as to say, but of all the religions, this one really figured them out.
Yeah.
I don't. I think that's ridiculous. We're not going to figure God out.
Mm-mm.
Sure.
And that's beautiful. I think
Yeah.
there's a reason that it's called a mystery in the
Yeah.
Bible because we're not supposed to have all the answers. We don't have to have all the T's crossed and the I's dotted and we don't have to do that. Like we can just trust.
Yeah.
And you can really trust someone when you believe they are love and they are good and that their intentions are always good towards you and that they're
Yeah.
not keeping a record of your wrongs and they're not going to send you to hell if you believe wrong. My
Mm,
goodness,
mm.
as a parent, Annalise, think about it. Like, is there anything that either of your kids could do that would
No,
make
not
you go, oh, well, off to hell with you for all of
no,
eternity with no chance of ever reconciling?
not a
No.
single thing.
But we say that about God
Yeah.
and we accept that. And it just to me, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, if somebody's listening to this and they're still an evangelical, they're very well, they're probably not listening anymore. But if they were, that this conversation is probably making them very uncomfortable. And and I
Oh,
get it.
I hate
I
to make
get
people
it.
comfortable, but
I do too. But
yeah.
it's
I
I don't know.
That was another thing, the health thing. My son came home from a friend's, and he said, "Mama, little Johnny doesn't go to church." And well, I was told at VBS this summer that if he doesn't walk, the faith walk we do, he's going to hell. And well, I don't want my friend to go to hell. And something just broke for me inside on that level too, where I
Yeah.
hadn't confronted that shadow, the hell thing. And once I
Mhm.
started doing all the research on that and the mistranslations and the things inserted and just all of it, I was freed from it. But
Mhm.
people are so scared of that, and rightfully so. I mean, that's a scary narrative.
It's
Um,
terrifying. Yeah.
yeah,
It's
and
horrifying.
it made it gave me horrible anxiety as a child. Horrible anxiety. Yeah, I think just letting go and letting God be this divine experience that he always wanted to be is just such a beautiful thing. And I'm
Yeah.
really glad that my pain and my son and just all the players that were in my story led me to that point, or I would have just stayed in this little chained up box of my religion forever. I mean, that's my my dad's a minister. I mean, this is the basis of my life. So I'm just really glad to be discovering these things at the age that I am, because I have older people in my life on this path and they say, "Oh, I wish I could have gotten
Mhm.
these insights at your age and not lived
I
this
do
long
too.
in
Yeah.
prison."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I
But
was almost 50. I was probably 48 when I really started
yeah.
dismantling some of the stuff, but I, really didn't let go until I was about 50 and I just was like, I just can't live the rest of my life like this. I can't do
Yeah.
it. It doesn't feel and I had been taught not to listen to my feelings. So for a long time I just stuffed it down, but then finally I was like, oh, God, you gave me these feelings for a reason. Like and my heart, I knew in my heart that my desire was never to disprove anything.
Mm.
Every journey I went on was to prove that what I believed was true. And I really expected to find everything and then end up back in church. And unfortunately, in doing research, doing, the studies of history and the study of the Christian church and all of it, it just I always tell people if you really are comfortable and you're happy with your religion, don't do any research.
Don't find out. Don't find out.
Yeah, you're gonna see stuff.
Through nothing I'm saying am I trying to speak, against the
Right.
church. It's been, like I said, it's been such a gift in my life. Um, my goal in kind of bringing the things to light that have been brought to light in my life is just to set more people free
Mhm.
and help people recognize the relationship they can actually have with our creator.
Mm.
It's just so much bigger and so much more incredible than the box of religion lets you have.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful box. I enjoyed my time in the box, but
Same. Yeah.
but like you said, I mean, I never actually experienced that deep peace and just perfect ooey gooey feelings on the inside while in religion. Those
Yeah.
those peaceful uh, moments and those revelations have come since letting myself experience God rather than just Him be some mental construct and belief system.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That makes sense. Yeah,
but
I always tell people I'm not trying to burn bridges, I'm trying to build them. I'm
yeah,
trying to help people understand that it's not about like we don't need to burn down the church or anything. I just wish the
oh,
church would I don't even know if it's possible, but like get to know who God really is and
yeah,
not who they've been told for
who
so
they
long. And there are a lot of churches that are doing that. Like, and I've had a couple of the pastors of those churches on my show, and that gives me hope for the future. It's like, oh, wait a minute. So, going to church isn't political and I don't have to be a Republican and I don't have to, wait a minute, what? It's like it's it's so much more beautiful and inclusive than we've been led to believe, I guess, is how I feel at this point. And I think that's probably what you're saying. It's like just just think about it.
yeah. Just think about it and just give it a Google search. I mean, even just the history of where you're. We should know this before we enter a religion. We should have a book that gives us the history, and people might make different decisions.
Yeah.
Um, for me, it's just pointing me straight back to Christ and
Mhm.
and the teachings of Jesus, Yeshua, however you prefer.
Yeah.
uh, Everything that's documented that he said, both in the biblical canons, scriptures we have, and in the Nag Hammadi scriptures, the teachings of Jesus are so spot on, perfect, pure, lead you to that oneness with your creator.
Mhm.
It's the religion that was built afterwards and the control mechanisms and just the darkness that got involved in the name of Jesus
Mhm.
that really changed things. And so, my husband, he jokes with me. He's like, I don't know why you say you're a Christian. You don't fit in with the Christians anymore. You can't really be saying that you're a Christian. And I say, I am going to say I'm a Christian because I believe I'm the true meaning of a Christian, someone who follows Christ.
Right.
If if you have to believe every word every man in the Bible said and Paul said and everything to be a Christian, that's not the same thing.
Mhm.
I think a person who follows Christ should be allowed to say, "Yeah, I'm a Christian." But now I
Mhm.
do realize I don't fit in anymore with the mainstream box, and, by their rules, maybe I'm not, but
But by God's you are,
yeah,
love God with your heart, soul, strength, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And
yeah,
those 2 things will wrap it all up, I mean, in the eyes of Christ and in his words, that's the thing that makes everything else fall into place. And
yeah,
I feel like that's when you see God that way, instead of like, well, you can't be a Christian if you don't believe in hell. You can't be a Christian if you don't believe in the rapture. You can't be a Christian if it's like where does the Bible say that? Like
yeah,
help me understand. Um yeah, it's just love and everything falls into place.
really.
And I see that in you, Annalise. I just want you to know that. I know it's hard and I know you get a lot of hate, but I see your desire isn't to create, a frenzy or a stir people up and get them, riled. Your desire is just to love people and to show them the love of God, of Christ,
Yeah,
that Christ spirit, that love spirit that we all have access to. It's like you have it. I
thank
I see it. So thank you for what you do.
thank you. I need to hear those kinds of encouragements,
I
honestly.
know you do. I know you
Yeah.
do.
I mentioned on one of my videos, I'm a grade A people pleaser, like,
Mhm.
before all of this, and I had prayed to stop being a people pleaser. And I just think
There
it's
you
fun
go.
when you pray for these things instead of just imagining now you're not a people pleaser now. No, now you're on TikToks telling your beliefs and getting called a witch and a false
Oh,
prophet.
yeah. Mhm.
So that'll
Yeah.
make you stop being a people pleaser really
Yeah,
quickly.
I tell people all the time my deconstruction inoculated me from people pleasing 100%. You
Absolutely.
know, I just don't I'm like, "Oh, well," I mean, and the truth is I don't even get mad, I don't get upset. I'm like, "I get it. I understand why I
I do.
totally 100% understand why you feel the way you feel about me, and it
Mm,
doesn't bother me that you feel that way about me.
yeah.
It makes me sad, but
Mhm.
it doesn't make me angry, and I don't wanna fight with you. I don't wanna take you someplace you're not ready to go. But you know what? When you start asking questions and you start wondering and you start opening your eyes a little bit, you know I'm here.
Yeah,
And that's kind of my message to people. It's like, just, you know what? You do you, I'll do me, and
I love
you know where I stand. So if you ever come to a place where you're like, wow, I think I might be wrong about a few things,
mhm.
then let's talk.
Yeah. I think, it was that realization during the vision experience where I realized I'm not my ego, like, I'm not just this character on earth,
Mhm,
that really set me free to say, "I don't care what y'all think about what I am believing,
mhm.
how I am walking with God. I'm not this person anyway. You know,
Yeah.
this is the character I feel on this planet for now, but,
Mhm,
but I and everyone is so we're so much bigger than that, and if you can escape that prison of that mental construct of who you are in your mind, you don't care as much what people
mhm.
think
It's
about what
so
you
true. 100%. Thank you for that. And so, okay, we're going to wrap it up here, but like, what would you like to say to my listeners before
Mhm.
you go? Is there anything that you haven't said that you'd like to say?
I can think of some. I've thought of something.
Okay.
I jotted it down the other day, and I have my notebook with me. So, before all of this spiritual stuff started happening in my life, I was on track to be some, uh, successful singer-songwriter. That's what I wanted. That was my goal, is to use the gifts God gave me to build a career out of it, be heard, all of that. I had this need to be, validated, I guess, that I was doing something that the world thought was worthy. But when I had that experience, I realized I wasn't incomplete anymore, and I didn't have a reason to chase anything anymore. I was free to just make music because I loved it, but there was no more of a longing. It was like being set free from a prison because I realized, as it's funny, as Jim Carrey says, he said, I realized I wasn't Annalise experiencing the universe. I was the universe experiencing Annalise. You know,
Mhm,
he said it as Jim, obviously, but once I realized who I really was in in Christ, I didn't need to keep chasing anything,
mm,
whether that was a musical career, or for someone else it might be marriage, relationships, success in careers, whatever it is you're chasing, you don't have to chase it. You are complete. You have it all within you already. And attaining these things in life, it'll feel good for a moment, but it's not, you don't need it. It's not what's going to fulfill.
mm,
You're already complete. And I didn't really understand that until all of this happened. And I was able to lay down the chase for uh, validation from the world once I realized I had the whole universe inside me.
mm,
And I don't know, that just really set me free. And I hope to share that with others so others can be set free from that,
mm.
because we waste so much time chasing something external to make us feel like we're enough. But we already are. It's kind of a cosmic joke, We're just we're, we're out here looking outward, reaching upward, thinking if I can just get it, if I could just get it, I'll be there. I'll feel good. I'll be at peace. But it's already there. That's why Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is within. And I wish I'd known that a lot sooner.
Mm.
But I'm thankful to know it now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, Annalise, I honor your journey. That was beautiful, and I appreciate your insights and your time and your ability to just open up. I know this is a lot, and I know there's a lot of people that don't agree with you.
Yeah.
But you know what? There was a lot of people that didn't agree with Jesus too. So
That's right.
you keep going, girl. I'm proud of you.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Thank you for having me.